Hi class, I'm posting this video on cause and effect writing. Get back to the beginning here. I think a video will be more effective than a live Big Blue Button session because Big Blue Button continues to give us problems, and this way you'll have the material. Feel free to contact me, email me with any other questions. Set up an appointment through You Can Book Me, which is in the signature line of all my emails, and also posted in the announcements if you think that would be helpful. So I read all of the cause and effect essays, and I have posted commentary on all those, some audio commentary, some written commentary, and the notes that I have compiled here reflect some common problems, and I encourage you to listen carefully and try to apply some things that you see that might be helpful to you. Major areas, or the main areas needing improvement. Make sure your thesis reflects a complex cause and effect relationship and also demonstrates a value to your reader. Why do we care? Why should we understand this cause and effect relationship? In order to demonstrate that, you also need to know who your audience is, which I will discuss in a minute. Here's a possible thesis. Unregulated screen time has a more negative impact on teenage users than many people realize. This isn't really a high-scoring thesis statement. It's not really saying anything original, and it has a weak verb right here in has, and I think we can do a little bit, express a more complex relationship here. Unregulated screen time negatively impacts teenage users in ways many adults have not considered. So now the audience is probably parents of teenagers or adults who work with teenagers. Maybe the audience could even be clearer here. Both times we said unregulated screen time rather than just screen time in general, which also helps us to avoid an overgeneralization by including that word unregulated. We shifted out the word, or switched out the word has for impacts, which is a much better verb. And we've added the idea that many adults have not considered. So you're going to want to come up with some good ideas here. Okay, what kind of cause and effect relationship would you be exploring here? I'm trying to move my picture real quick if I can. Go back to that. Okay, CE relationships you could explore. You might begin by presenting a situation, even some facts or statistics on how much time teens are spending on screen time, and maybe what kind of teen, maybe kind of a demographic. So spend some time painting the situation. This is an effect and a cause and can be explored as both. You might say, well, what has led to this? Are parents not regulating things? Why do kids spend so much time on it when they didn't used to? That would be taking your primary effect and exploring the causes that came before it. You could do that, okay? After you do paint the situation, here is the effect the paper primarily wants to explore. You could go to as a cause, it leads to effect one. So the situation of overuse becomes a cause, it leads to the first effect, and I chose obesity. Not to be offensive in any way, but to say that sometimes too much screen time limits exercise and has affect child health. Another thing I thought about is lack of sleep. There's a lot of studies linking screen time to lack of sleep. Effect two, poor communication or face-to-face communication skills. And effect three, exposure to dangerous or pornographic content. So this would allow you to have the first major chunk of the paper be about the situation itself. And in this case, the situation is both an effect and a cause. If you treat it primarily as a cause, then you would go on to explore these three effects. Notice that the paper does not devote equal amounts of time to cause and effect, and that's okay. It's okay that first we hit the cause, and then we go and we discuss several of its effects. Okay. Okay, your conclusion might connect the cause and effect again and encourage the reader to think about how either aiding or thwarting this cause and effect relationship could affect them, or the teenager in this case. All right, another area that needs improvement is use the meta language of cause and effect. Some of these words are solo cause, which are very rare, primary cause, secondary cause, contributing cause, primary effect, ancillary effect, chain of cause and effect. Okay, all these things need to be considered. And if you're using these terms, it tells me that you are exploring the nuance, the layers, the complexity of the cause and effect relationship. Okay, keep the relationship clear between and among paragraphs. I should always understand what's going on in a paragraph. Is this paragraph exploring a new effect? Is this paragraph exploring how this effect has in turn become a cause? So it gets tricky sometimes because cause and effect shifts, okay? A cause becomes an effect becomes a cause. So these roles kind of shift. And it's okay to have language in your paragraph that points out how that evolution has occurred. But most importantly, I should be able to understand how each paragraph connects either to the one that comes before it or to the thesis idea. So there are two possible structures I've included here. Structure 1 begins with describing the effect, like we talked about, or the situation, and with introduction. Explore several causes leading to this effect. So each cause could be a single paragraph. For each cause, be sure to give a specific and concrete example. That was one of the weaknesses of the papers in general, as I saw a lack of concrete examples to demonstrate main ideas. Let me shift my picture again. I might lose my screen. Of course I will, but I can go right back to it. Okay. Conclusion may consider how readers can act to stop or improve this relationship. Structure 2, describe the cause, the moments that began the whole chain of CE. And this could be a great place for an anecdote. Tell a story of how this cause and effect relationship was set in place with a specific person or a specific agency or a specific group, okay? And then you'd have the effect 1 of the cause, effect 2, effect 3, each supported with examples. And I just noted here with effect 3, you might also show how the effect becomes its own cause, and your paper may need to go down that track for a minute, okay? Conclusion may explore the relationship again and seek to talk about how, as an audience, we are interested in facilitating that cause and effect relationship or perhaps stopping it. Topic, sentences, and transitions are so important in this paper and in the definition paper because they establish and make clear to your reader the main ideas of these paragraphs, and they help for me to see how things are connected. So really make sure you're doing that. Some of the resources provided for studying a cause and effect paragraph emphasize that. Cause and effect essay. How to support a point. This is one of the main weaknesses I saw. You might say that, for example, go back to our example, that too much viewing time for a teenager causes a lack of sleep. But you don't support it with facts, statistics, or a real or hypothetical example. So each of your points need to be supported in order for the whole idea of your paper to be convincing. So I mentioned a few ideas here. Research, facts, statistics can support your point. With a hypothetical example, and you may not be used to using hypothetical examples, but if you have read about your topic a lot and you're well versed in it, you can create a hypothetical example that's credible, and this can build your ethos because it shows you know enough about the concept to create a hypothetical example. You could also use a real example, observed or experienced. Remember, you need to write in first or third person, so if you use a real example, make sure you don't fall into second person. Lots of second person I saw in these essays, and that is an error for this particular genre. With expert quotes, be sure if you quote it, you discuss it. If it's worth quoting, it's worth discussing. Always help me, your reader, or the reader you have implied, to understand the significance of a quote. And the last way that you can support a point was with comparisons or figurative language. You might say, if you're giving a model of a negative leader, you might say his leadership style is like Hitler's. Okay, that's a negative leader. Everyone would agree on that. So you can compare or create figurative language to help us understand the point that you mean. Cause and effect and definition tend to fall into abstraction, so I think that's why I saw many points not supported with examples. Know who your audience is. We mentioned this. Your audience selection should affect your tone. Okay, are you being aggressive? Are you trying to really encourage your audience to change? Are you being more gentle because you're trying to reach an audience who already disagrees with you or may be inclined to not agree with you? So your tone, your examples, and your thesis should be affected. If you are writing to a Christian audience, I still don't want you to use Christianese, a lot of these Christian cliches. I want you to think about what it means. I think you might say, let's see, the Spirit was in the room, okay? A non-Christian audience is probably not going to know what you mean by that. And what do you mean by that? There was a time in your faith when you really maybe had to have that explained to you. and now you just use it without even thinking anymore. I want you to think about those common cliches. And if you're going to have a Christian audience, I want you to explain them in a fresh way. Help them to see this in a new way this time. If you're writing to a non-Christian audience, even more, we shouldn't have that in there, okay? And then think about what source would your audience find most convincing. If you have a Christian audience, some Christian thinkers, the Bible, pastors, those types of sources work. If you don't, if you have a teenage audience, what kind of sources will meet them? If you have a scholarly audience. So your sources should also reflect that you have a good understanding of your audience. Grammar, mechanics, and style. Run-ons and fragments, we've got to master those. We're still having too many of these in the paper, and each one is going to be a deduction. If you would like to schedule a writing help session with ACE, I have posted the how to schedule an appointment in your course announcements, so it'll take you how to schedule an appointment. Please keep working on active and precise verbs. I mark that on every paper. Read your own paper aloud, preferably to another listener, because when you're reading it aloud and that listener is there, you will see on their face or by their expression that what you meant to say you didn't quite say. And you'll catch missing words and extra words, and you might catch run-ons and fragments that way too. Be very cautious of what I call free-floating quotes. Some people call them dropped quotes. This is a sentence that begins and ends with quotation marks and does not have any introductory phrasing or interpretive phrasing at the end that is in your words. You might look up the phrase signal phrases. Just Google that, signal phrases, and you will see several sites have published lists of ways to incorporate quotes in your writing using signal phrases. And do read your peer and professor comments. A grammar focal point that I saw wrong, I saw this error on several papers, so I thought I'd put it here. I'm going to move my picture one more time. Was agreement. There were lots of these kinds of errors, and I think the topics lent itself to this. I provided you with 2 websites. You can pause this screen and capture those right now. Towson is particularly useful that they help you to visualize some of these grammar issues, and this one was actually very good too. If you enter subject-verb agreement or pronoun antecedent agreement in your search bar, maybe pronoun antecedent agreement practice in your search bar, all these websites will come up that have places you can practice this skill with immediate feedback. This is a skill that we hit again in Comp 2, so we want to correct this in our writing. Here's an example. The team forgot their football. Well, how many teams are there here? There's one team, but this pronoun is plural. The sentence should read, the team forgot its football, because its is the singular expression of their. Another example, a leader brings their team to their potential, okay? Well, there is plural, but how many leaders do we have here? One, okay? And how many teams do we have? One. So we need to replace both of these. A leader brings his team to its potential. Now, of course, you could have had her here. I like to alternate the gendered pronouns, do his and her, and avoid the construction, a leader brings his or her team. I just find that cumbersome, so I do alternating instead, but you can do either of those based on what kind of tone and style you want to have. So we want to really focus on eliminating some of these agreement errors in our final drafts. For MLA, your heading and spacing should be correct. I am writing on so many papers, omit extra spaces. You probably have your default set to automatically insert a space after you press return. You need to go to the default settings and remove automatically insert space at the end of a paragraph. You need to cite the quotes that you provide precisely and carefully. There's information on how to do that in the reading in weeks 5 and 6, and it kind of destroys your paper's ethos when you don't cite correctly. You needed to have 2 quotes in your paper, and this is a bridge to Comp 2 where you'll be citing sources and using quotations a lot more. So really try to do your best here. It'll prepare you for Comp 2. Avoid those free-floating quotes. If you use the Bible, this requires a precise citation method. Keep in mind that there are all these different translations of the Bible, and that matters. And your citation needs to indicate what translation you use. See Owl at Purdue for how to cite, I think they call it an ancient text there, but they show you how to cite the Bible. Cite paraphrase. If you use another source and you took the words or the information they provided and you put it into your own words, you would have a parenthesis at the end of the paraphrased information that would have the author's name and the page number or numbers. If the author's name was not available, you would have the title of the article. See the resources provided in class and Owl at Purdue no reason to have these kinds of errors in your paper. Do not forget a works cited page. And on your works cited page, you should have at least 2 sources because you are required to have 2 quotes. So again,